Hello, children. It's your boy, Yickman, coming at you with another review. Actually, it's probably the first review. I don't think I've reviewed a movie yet, but here we are. Thank you for the notification. Shut up, please. Have we reviewed a movie before? No. But are we going to review one today? Damn straight. We're going to be talking about a little movie you may have heard of. I mean, you may have clicked the video because you know the movie, right? It's called Sonic the Hedgehog. Spoilers, of course, but if you are looking for a spoiler-free recommendation or non-recommendation, I can give that to you right now. Are you a Sonic fan? If yes, then you should go see this movie. You will enjoy this. You will have fun. It is very entertaining. It is very funny. And there are a lot of little references and Easter eggs that if you've been playing Sonic games for as long as I have, which is a long time, then you will have a good time, and it'll be very fun. If you are not a Sonic fan, you will not know these Easter eggs. You will just be, you will probably walk out of there thinking, wow, that was a pretty alright kids movie. But it is fun. Jim Carrey is very funny. So, if you're not a Sonic fan, should you go see it in theaters? I mean, unless you have Sonic fans as friends who are going to drag you regardless, I mean, you're gonna go. So, go with them. You'll have a good time. Don't worry about it. It'll be great. If you are a Sonic fan, get out there, go see it. You will enjoy it. That's the quick review. So, yeah, the spoilers begin now. You have until I finish drinking the last little bit of this water to click off the video. So here we go. So Maria dies, obviously. If you know Sonic, Maria dies. And this is the catalyst for Shadow's journey in Sonic Adventure 2, which this movie is based off of. Of course, we knew this is not going to be an exact, play-by-play of Sonic Adventure 2 on the screen. Of course, they haven't introduced Rouge or, who else is in Sonic Adventure 2? Jesus Christ. Amy. Amy as a character has not been introduced into the movies yet. Although if you've seen the movie, again spoilers, you know that the next one will be with Amy and Metal Sonic. Very cool. Anyway, it's not a play-by-play of Sonic Adventure 2. It's different, and honestly, that's fine. I don't think I really want a recreation of the exact game that I've played. Sonic Adventure 2 story has some problems. Let's just say that. So sure, there's a lot going on in there, and with this movie, they took a lot of liberties in this movie, but there's a few issues with the liberties that they've taken that I had. So my initial impression after finishing the movie was, honestly, it was kind of sitting at a 5 out of 10. That was my initial reaction, right? And granted, I watched the whole movie, I laughed a lot. It was very funny. And very entertaining, but I left feeling disappointed. Now, I think for me, there's probably two reasons as to why I left disappointed initially. And I just got 10,000 steps. I gotta remember to take off the fitness tracker when I start talking, because I talk with my hands a lot and get steps while sitting, and that's cheating. Like I said, there are two reasons that I think made me feel disappointed with this movie. Number one, and not as big as the second reason, is Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey is great, do not get me wrong. He is a very funny actor, and he does carry this movie on the comedy front. He really, I think, gives it his all, especially with playing two separate characters that are kind of the same, but one is older. I think he does a really great job of doing that and making it entertaining. He's very fun on screen. He is I think he owns the majority of the laughs that you have in this movie. Everyone in the theater was laughing. Jim Carrey's great. Now, I think that because they were trying really hard to get Jim Carrey to come back to the Sonic movies, they put a lot of Jim Carrey in the movie, almost to the point where he felt like the main character. And that, to me, was kind of a problem, because the main characters shouldn't be Dr. Robotnik. I felt like there were some sections in the movie, particularly the laser dance scene. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. I'm hoping you've seen it if you're still watching, but you know what I'm talking about. The one where him and Gerald Robotnik are dancing in a laser hallway in the gun HQ. That scene was funny and weird. It was weird, for sure. You laugh because it's funny or weird, whichever. I think I was laughing because it was weird. That's a scene that didn't need to be there, and I think could have, the time of the movie could have been used for the story of Shadow and Sonic, and mostly Shadow, which goes into my other big point. So to wrap up, point number one, I think Jim Carrey, while he is very good, he does take up a lot of screen time and maybe even a little too much attention. So number two was that they took a lot of liberties with Shadow's story for the movie series that I don't agree with. Having been a Sonic fan for as long as I have, Shadow is definitely my favorite character in the series. All my friends know this. I am the Shadow fanboy out of the group. This is true. So to me, he's a very important character. There's a lot that they changed based on the kind of lore that they're building with the movie series, and I don't like it. I just don't like it. So I think number one, for example, they first introduced Shadow as the ultimate life form, but he's like an alien. Because Sonic is technically an alien in this universe. Shadow is also an alien who came on an asteroid, and he was in the asteroid. That's it. He was already fully formed. Gerald Robotnik did not create Shadow, which to me is kind of weird. And it's like, well, what's the connection here? What's the connection with Shadow and Gerald Robotnik? Why would Shadow want to team up with him? Originally Shadow and Gerald have a father-son relationship. And if you're a Sonic fan, you've probably played Sonic Shadow Generations. And in Shadow Generations, they elaborate on that, We kind of see this relationship with Gerald, Maria, and Shadow being this little family. So there was, Gerald created Shadow, kind of his father, and Maria being the granddaughter, and kind of like a cousin of sorts, or sibling to Shadow. And that dynamic is less believable. Maria is in this movie, yes. Very sparsely, though. She is there for major points where they need to introduce Maria to give Shadow the reason for why he's so angry, obviously. But they don't give enough of... I just didn't feel enough of that. I didn't see enough of Shadow and Maria interacting. It felt like quick montages that came and went. And, I think for me, I get it. Yeah, Shadow and Maria makes sense. But if you're someone who's never seen or never played a Sonic game or knows nothing about the lore or anything like that, I don't know if it would be believable for them. Maybe a kid, kids, they're like, wow, I'm sad. There's not, the bar is low for them. But an adult who is watching this movie for the first time, it might not be as believable for them on that level. And I think that was kind of, maybe you could have taken some of Jim Carrey's time and dedicated more scenes to Maria and Shadow a little bit. But the stuff that they did have of Maria, there was one scene that they had of Maria and Shadow where they're looking up at the starry night sky and they kind of have this heart-to-heart conversation. And I was like, that's great. I like that. It was very reminiscent of the Shadow Generations prequel animations, where, Maria is talking with Shadow and telling him yeah, you'll always have me to back you up. You can do whatever you want. It was reminiscent of that, and I thought that was good. I just think there wasn't enough to establish a great connection there. Again, with Maria's character, on top of all that, Maria does not have this autoimmune disease that she has in Sonic Adventure 2. She's not sick. There is no space colony arc. They're not in space. They're just in a random military bunker in the ground somewhere. And that's lame. Personally, I don't like that. I think that's boring. The space colony arc is such a important piece of, Sonic Adventure 2's story and just a big piece of the lore. And I think removing it is a massive, massive miss. And maybe they didn't have the budget to make all that. That could, I would imagine recreating the space colony arc in some fashion would be very expensive. That did not stop them from creating the Eclipse Cannon, though, which we'll get into in a little bit. So Shadow and Maria. It wasn't really believable to me. There needed to be more, personally. Shadow and Gerald Robotnik, not really believable at all. I didn't see them really interact in the past that much. Just kind of Gerald was the guy in charge of the research on Shadow's alien ultimate life form status. and his power and stuff like that. That was pretty much it. So the other thing is Maria's death. We all know Maria gets shot. She gets straight up murked by a gun agent, in front of Shadow, right? Like, this is a traumatic event that spirals Shadow into a revenge-filled, mission. Something like that. But in this movie, obviously, they don't do that. They don't shoot Maria directly. Like, there's a soldier who's like, I gotta shoot this child. I gotta shoot this child. And then, like, the commander from the future and, a younger self is like, no, they're children, you stupid dumbass. Like, he's like, you can't shoot them. And then they're like struggling over the weapon, and then the weapon fires and it shoots a tank or something, and boom, explosion. And that is how Maria dies. She's not directly shot or anything like that. She just dies inadvertently from an explosion. I think the way that they go about, the reason for Shadow wanting to take revenge on humanity, being that Maria was killed, it doesn't have the same level of impact of when a straight up, like, it was a gun directive to eliminate people in the Ark because they wanted to cover up Project Shadow. They no longer wanted Gerald to create the ultimate life form, or they didn't want him to, interfere any longer with their plans, whatever that was. Whatever Gunn's reasoning for this was. And they go on there and they purposely slaughter innocent people on the Ark. I think that is a much more impactful plot point than just randomly an explosion happens while they're trying to get arrested. I just didn't think it was that impactful. I think they should have taken more directly from the source material, at least with that, because I think it really hits home with that kind of story. The other big detail with this movie is that Gerald Robotnik is alive. He's not a hallucination in Eggman's head. I had once thought that after seeing the trailer, maybe he's hallucinating him. No, he's straight up alive. And that's very different from the source material too. There was no, Gerald Robotnik getting executed by a firing squad like in Sonic Adventure 2. He was just put in jail. And then he worked out a deal with Gunn to be free by making the Eclipse cannon for them. Gerald at this point is also very upset that Maria has died. He's on a revenge bender as well. He's the one who releases Shadow in this movie, not Dr. Eggman. Dr. Gerald's main goal is to destroy planet Earth. And Shadow agrees with him. They're both in on this plan to destroy planet Earth with the Eclipse cannon. Dr. Gerald Robotnik manipulates Dr. Eggman, Jim Carrey, with this kind of like, it's a very funny subplot of like, oh, we're family. You have family now. Because Dr. Robotnik in like the first and second movies, I think there was, especially in the first movie, there was like a point to say like he had no family. He was kind of like an orphan or something like that. And, he didn't have anyone. And now he has his grandpappy or whatever, grandpap or pop-pop or whatever the hell he's calling him in this movie. I don't know. There's a little funny sequence where they are bonding, doing all this fun stuff, like, riding a bicycle for the first time, having Christmas morning and stuff like that. It's very funny. It's very much Jim Carrey comedy, and it's great. It's a nice little break from the other parts of the movie. So to bring it back, I think that Gerald's plot point of revenge, I think it makes sense overall, because, before Gerald was, killed in Sonic Adventure 2, he was like straight up gone. He's like, I will kill all of you. And he created this whole plot with the BioLizard and everything to like use the Eclipse cannon to like nuke the Earth. And then even if Shadow decided not to do it, he was having the BioLizard he had programmed the BioLizard to slam the Ark into the planet, destroying the entire planet. Like, this dude was going to kill everybody. That was his goal at the end of it before he died. Since they decided to keep Gerald alive for the movie, I think it makes perfect sense that he is straight up the villain. So moving on, Shadow's introduction, I think, was great. I think the scenes that Shadow is in, especially his introduction with like fighting Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, a great scene. I think it's top tier. There's a lot of cool references, maybe not a lot, but there's definitely one that caught my eye. Of the Shadow, it's a reference from Shadow the Hedgehog, the game opening cinematic, where like, Shadow is looming over Sonic holding a gun, and Sonic is like, crumbling. He's like crumbling on the floor after being beaten and bruised or whatever. And they recreate that shot, and I'm just like, there it is. You go, oh, you do the Leonardo DiCaprio meme where you're snapping and pointing at the screen. It's that whole thing. Keanu Reeves does a great job as Shadow. I was a little worried, I'm not gonna lie. I was a little worried. If you played the Shadow Generations DLC that came with the digital deluxe edition or whatever, in Shadow Generations, he didn't sound great. He kind of sounded like he was recording his lines on the toilet. They're like, "Hey, Keanu, we need you to just record some lines for the video game. Do you have time?" And he's like, "Sure, I can. I'm in the middle of taking a poop, but I can do it." And then he did it in 5 minutes. He phoned it in. I'm sorry. I love you, Keanu, but you phoned it in. And it's fine. Whatever. Don't matter. It's fine. You did great in the movie, though. The movie was great. He's really good as Shadow. I think his voice fits it pretty well for this movie. So yeah, like he was good. No problems there. So with Shadow's story in this movie, I think overall his little arc is fine. Granted, Maria is not in the movie that much, but I think that his story beats make sense, and his like redemption at the end makes sense. It's just kind of like Sonic Adventure 2, except instead of Amy being the one to, kind of remind Shadow of Maria's promise, there is no Maria's promise. It's just Shadow learning to cope with loss. And I think that was fine. I thought about it more and more, and I think that I liked it. I think that his story, rather than being this convoluted plot, like in Sonic Adventure 2, of Shadow's memory being manipulated by Gerald, instead of that, what we got is Gerald being alive and directly manipulating Shadow emotionally with revenge, with a desire for revenge, to achieve Gerald's goals, and Gerald's goals being destroy the planet. I thought that, like I said before, I thought that making Gerald the villain was a good move because it made it so that there was this interesting dynamic between Gerald Robotnik manipulating not only Shadow, but Dr. Eggman. He was emotionally manipulating both of them to further his goal. He no longer cared about anything. He lost his family. Maria was the only family he had, and he didn't consider anybody else family. Not even Dr. Eggman. Not even really Shadow. He didn't really care for Shadow. I think that for this story, it works because instead of Shadow's memories being all scrambled up by Gerald Robotnik, it's just him having this pain of loss. And by the end of the movie, kind of going through this cycle of grief of like, I don't have this stuff in front of me, so I don't remember, but the stages of grief where there's the pain and there's like the denial, there's the the rage, and then there's the something, and then acceptance. There's these steps. Maybe I'll put it on screen. I'll put it on screen here so that you can see what I'm talking about. But I think that he kind of goes through this cycle, the cycles of grief here. And by the end of the movie, he concludes with the acceptance. And I think it's actually really well done in that respect. I think it's a much more believable narrative than the scrambling of his memories, of what Maria's wish was. And I think, again, removing Maria's wish for Shadow, like, oh, Shadow, save the world or whatever, removing that completely, I think is fine because it kind of avoids this problem that the story had in the games throughout, with Shadow being like, I'm going to be this person, I'm going to just fulfill Maria's wish, and then him going through all this stuff, which is good for the games and fine, whatever, I like that. But for the movies, I think it's fine to have it be a one and done. Like, he's just learning to accept loss. There's a scene that I actually really liked at the end of the movie, close to the finale of the movie, where Sonic and Shadow are sitting on the moon after they fighting, and Sonic, filled with rage for, this is a thing I skipped over, but like Shadow punched Tom by accident and almost killed him and blah, blah, blah. And so Sonic kind of felt this rage that Shadow had been feeling, and he acted the same way that Shadow did. And there was like this parallel between how Sonic reacted to loss and between how Shadow is reacting to his loss. And Sonic has experienced loss before with Long Claw in the first movie, that owl lady. And so Shadow dealing with this loss, kind of talks with Sonic and is like, does the pain go away or something like that? And Sonic's like, no, but you just learn to do something with it. I forget the exact quote. But it was a really nice moment where like it kind of, I think, like I said, talks about dealing with loss, because it is, with loss with loss of life, people, it's not easy, and it's not something that just can be, gotten over, and you never do get over it. That pain will be there with you, and it's just about, oh, that's what it was. It was about love. He said something about love, like, yeah, the pain will never go away, but you learn to fill that pain with love, or something like that, which is totally fair, totally valid, and really a great message for this movie, I think. And a really good message for Shadow's story. Anyway, I'm rambling about that. I'm looking at the timer right now, and it says I've been yapping for 27 minutes. So let's try and keep this a little closer to the chest. So to kind of recap, my major problems with the movie were Jim Carrey being a little bit too heavily featured in the movie. Like I said, I love Jim Carrey, but a little too much. Could have used that time to build up Shadow's character a little more, since this was his movie. I did like the dynamic with Gerald Robotnik, Shadow, and Ivo Robotnik, Jim Carrey, younger Jim Carrey. I think that was a really good dynamic. I liked having Gerald be the villain. There was also this redemption arc with Eggman. It was a redemption arc for Shadow and for Eggman. And I think that worked. Like, Eggman learning to appreciate the people who do care about him, like Agent Stone. I kind of glossed, I kind of went right over that. But, like, there was a whole plot with Agent Stone not really being friends with Robotnik, kind of just being his, like, sycophant. That's what they always call him, a sycophant. So now it was kind of, Ivo Robotnik, or Eggman, just like realizing, yeah, you should care about the people that care about you, and not dismiss them. And there was the parallel with Shadow, the redemption with Shadow and Eggman at the same time, and Eggman ending up saving the day and stuff like that. And I thought all that was fine. I think at the end of the day, the problem I had when I left the theater feeling like the movie was a 5 out of 10 was because I felt like maybe they didn't do Shadow's character justice in that movie. They didn't show all the things I was expecting to see. They didn't have Maria's illness. They didn't have the bio lizard at the end. They didn't have the space colony arc. They didn't have all this other stuff. Gerald was alive and everything was different. And I was just thinking, I think expecting more Sonic Adventure 2 than there was. But as I think about it, I've kind of rethought about the movie in a different context, tried to separate it from what the game had done, and just accepted it in the context of the cinematic universe. Because in the cinematic universe, the lore is different. Sonic is not a native to Earth, he's an alien. And so is Shadow, by that proxy. He is a alien that came in an asteroid, and he was already the ultimate life form. Gerald didn't create him, like I said before, I think. I hope I said that before, because that's a big deal. Gerald didn't create Shadow. There were issues that I had when I initially watched it where I wasn't getting what I expected. And after thinking about it and removing it, like I said, removing myself from the context of the video games and keeping it within the context of the cinematic universe, I think that it was pretty good. So I've kind of revised my initial impression review of the movie in my own head. I think instead of a 5 out of 10, it's more of a 7 out of 10 for me. Closer to an 8 than it is a 6. Something like that. I think that Shadow was good, Keanu was good, a little bit too much Jim Carrey, but I think overall what you're getting is a lot of fan service. There's a lot of things that if you're a fan of Sonic the Hedgehog, they are targeting you. They are targeting millennials pretty hard with this movie. Like, yeah, like millennials our age now have kids and stuff like that, and they're taking the kids to the movies and stuff, and there's a lot of stuff for kids. There were kids in the theater and they were having a great time, and we as adults, like me and my friends, were having a great time as well. So I think there is in this movie something for everyone that you can enjoy. Even if you're not a Sonic fan, I think you can go to this movie and you can have a good time with your friends who are Sonic fans. You can laugh alongside them at Jim Carrey's very funny antics. I think just my overall problems were that it kind of watered down the story a little bit, maybe pulled some punches. I think they should have just straight up shot Maria. I'm gonna be honest, they should have just shot her. They should have just shot. And this is not memeing. I'm not memeing. I think that it would have been more impactful. It would have been a more devastating loss for Shadow, like it was in the original games. I think that would have been great. Like, yeah, is that kid friendly? To shoot a child on screen? No, they weren't going to do it. They never were going to do it. I think they should have, though. But they didn't. So it is what it is. And it's fine. Maria dies. It's great. Whatever. Cool. The end of the movie, I think, wraps up pretty well We get the reveal at the end of Amy and Metal Sonic, which is really cool. We'll see what they do with that in the next movie. I may want to watch it again just to kind of reevaluate my own thoughts on it, but yeah, I think I'm sitting right now at a solid 7. It's a solid 7. Really good. Pretty good movie. I will say, I just remembered this. One other problem I had with the movie. You know, Sonic is kind of annoying in this movie. Like, Sonic is a little annoying. And I don't say this with hate. I say this with that he is a different Sonic than what I'm used to. And I think Sonic can generally be annoying in the games too, and other kind of Sonic media TV shows and stuff. But I think that this version of Sonic is probably the most annoying version of Sonic ever created. And I don't mean that in a super negative way. I think his character is kind of like always on a comic relief bend, even in like serious situations. And sometimes it's like, hey Sonic, can you be for real for 2 seconds? Can we not make a joke right now? You know, I'm saying this. I'm the guy who makes jokes all the time, and I'm just like, okay, bro. This video was a long ramble. Hopefully it's not super long. I hope you enjoyed listening to my rambles. Please let me know what you think of the movie. If you had thoughts, please write it out in the comments. I would love to read them. You know, if from other longtime Sonic fans, I'd love to hear what you thought. I think the general consensus is that everyone really likes this movie. A lot of people say it's the best one of the 3. I don't know if it's the best one of the 3 for me. I think Sonic 2 really hit it for me. Like, that was like my childhood, a movie. You know, like the Genesis games were like my childhood. So like that was like, I really liked all that stuff. It was really cool. And Shadow is my boy, and I love to see my boy on screen, and that's great. I never thought I'd see the day. The child in me is screaming, you know? Like, if I was a kid and this movie was coming out when I was a kid, I would have died. You know, I would have, like, died of happiness. So I'm excited to see these movies keep being made. You know, I'll watch them. They're great. Cool. I have fun. I know I'm going to go have fun when I see them. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know what you thought. Yeah, that's about it. So, catch you later, I guess. Bye-bye.